Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and today's topic of the day is about authority figures in professional wrestling. And boy, what a history they have, both on screen and off screen. But we're going to mostly talk about in the kayfabe world, the ones you see on television every week, dating as far back to presidencies. So, you're probably wondering, why do we need authority figures, or what purpose do they serve, or what are you even talking about, Harry? Well, I tell you, the purpose of the authority figures. They're kayfabe leaders, both backstage and on screen. So you might hear about, back in the day, you hear about the president, but you didn't always see the president because he'd only come out if the situation called for it. It'd have to be under extreme circumstances. So the authority figures have to make the toughest decisions regarding the future of the talent and the matches they compete in. And this, if they're going to be contending for any championships or what have you, or the direction of certain feuds, and that dictates certain matches, right? In the storytelling. In kayfabe, the authority figure had booking power, or has booking power now, to make all the matches and big picture decision making. The titles obviously has changed names over the years, but, they're all synonymous, whether it's a president, commissioner, general manager. As far as I know, we still got GMs today, but, sometimes the names change and it could be used to further a particular storyline or, to delve into somebody's character development a little bit more. There have been times where titles have deviated, but it's all synonymous. Starting in the Attitude Era, they all worked directly underneath the owner, Vince McMahon, right as he was playing the Mr. McMahon character. So by 1996, it had been subtly acknowledged that Vince McMahon was the owner of the World Wrestling Federation, not just the friendly play-by-play announcer that you see on TV every week. Now, here's a caveat. Sometimes the commissioner, at the time we had a commissioner replacing president, the commissioner could overrule Mr. McMahon when it came to matchmaking. It was only used very sporadically because a lot of their decision-making was more or less exclusive to just making matches and running the weekly TV shows in general. And also it'd have to be, an act of McMahon being unfair or unjust. A situation like that, I guess, the morality of the situation sort of takes over. And that's where, the commissioner, general manager, what have you, would step into the picture. Unless it was a heel, then of course they'd be doing everything that Mr. McMahon wanted them to, provided McMahon's a heel in the storyline we're talking about, said time and place. So that caveat I just told you about there, where they could overrule Mr. McMahon, it did actually happen. I'll give you an example from Raw. On January the 25th, 1999, the night after the Royal Rumble that year, Shawn Michaels was our commissioner, though most of his time was spent off screen, as he was, retired from the ring. But he tried to stay active, but he was going through a drug addiction, taking too many pills, and his attitude in general wasn't great. So from what I've heard, he was such an asshole, nobody really wanted him around, so just as well he didn't come to work. So, this all happened via satellite, what I'm about to tell you. HBK ruled that since McMahon he willingly forfeited his WrestleMania main event spot, saying, I'm not going to challenge The Rock for the title at Mania. The runner-up of the Royal Rumble that year, Stone Cold Steve Austin, could automatically get the spot. He could claim it as his own. But then, of course, that led to St. Valentine's Day Massacre, where Austin willingly put up his spot just so he could kick McMahon's ass after the bell sounded. Great stuff, Austin versus McMahon. But, that's one of the few times I've actually seen somebody underneath the boss overrule him. And there's a few other examples, but that's a big one right there, just because it affected the storytelling direction in the Royal Rumble leading up to WrestleMania. And that's, wrestling world is all abuzz during WrestleMania season, obviously. So also, when it came to the McMahons in general, you had Linda McMahon, who was the CEO of the company for the majority of her time spent in World Wrestling Federation Entertainment. I believe she left sometime in the early 2010s, or late, it was like 2008 or 2010, somewhere around there. She tried to run for Senate in Connecticut and lost, and I wouldn't have voted for her anyways. Don't agree with her politics. And left the wrestling organization and left the wrestling world in general. So when she was the CEO, and that was also in kayfabe because she was playing an on-screen character, she was the moral center of the McMahon family drama that plagued our television screens weekly. Enough McMahons for 1 week, but when between Vince, Shane, and Stephanie, the drama, the tension was heightened. And sometimes it took up too much airtime, I have to say, with those three. But then comes Linda. Add the extra ingredient here. She's the morality, tries to keep everyone calm and center, and look at things diplomatically, as they should be, because sometimes Vince gets carried away. And so it was always refreshing to see Linda there, and she can actually overrule him. Number one, she's married. Number two, a CEO, and then you have the chairman. I've never worked in a company in that higher up position, so I don't know which one would outrank the other. I would think the chairman over the CEO, but probably in this case, maybe the CEO did. And it depends on the storyline. We'd have to look back into what led to the events of her overruling her husband in this particular scenario. So it's a little complex to get into, but you see where I'm going here. These authority figures, they play a big role, and, it's just a title that they're wearing on screen, but it carried a lot of privilege within. So let's take a look at some of these pro wrestling authority figures and talk a little bit about them, shall we? This even predates TV. We're going to go all the way back to 1963. The first known, as far as I could look back on Wikipedia, first known authority figure was president. We had president, that title first, and then came commissioner, and then came general manager, which we have today. So our first president underneath the McMahon authority, and this was Vincent James McMahon running the show back then, not his son yet. The first president was a guy named Willie Gilzenberg. I have no idea who he is or was. I think he was a boxing promoter. I only did a little bit of research just prior to this video a few days ago. Starting in 1963, and he had to relinquish his position in 1978 due to unfortunate circumstances, and that being he actually died while he was in office. Poor guy. Oh, so sad. He died while actively in office, and, it's like when JFK was shot, Lyndon B. Johnson had to take over, and, same thing happened in the presidency of our country. So, at that point in time, there was a guy from Japan who was a wrestling promoter over there named Hisashi Shinma, who ruled the roost from 1978 to 1984 in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. He was our second president, Hisashi Shinma. And Hisashi was there actually during the name change. It was 1979. The Worldwide Wrestling Federation was shortened to the World Wrestling Federation until 2002, until World Wildlife Fund won the lawsuit. Thus, we became World Wrestling Entertainment. So, Willie Gilzenberg and Hisashi Shinma were never actually seen on television. Maybe they were. I don't have any evidence to support that claim. But these are people I've never even heard talked about, because I guess the mid-'80s is as far back as I'm going to go, like WrestleMania 1, if you're talking about me as a diehard pro wrestling fan. So I probably don't do as much research. I mean, I know about the title histories. The first WWE champion was Buddy Rogers, and then went to Bruno Sammartino. And just because the history of such a prestigious lineage of gold that we're talking about, of a belt, that's worth doing the research for. Same with the tag and Intercontinental U.S. belts. Excuse me. So, 1984, I guess Shinma either retired or I guess he moved back to Japan. Jack Tunney from Toronto took over from 1984 to 1995. He was the first on-screen authority figure, to my knowledge. Remember, these are the viewpoints are strictly that of Harry Fling over here. So, if there was ever a time the aforementioned presidents were seen on television, let me know in the comments, and I'll try to look into that. But Jack Tunney, you remember him very, very well, and he was talked about a lot on screen. And a lot of his time was spent backstage. He'd cut promos and really make some big decisions as far as like big picture stuff is concerned, and the direction of the belt and the company, the World Wrestling Federation Championship. There's a lot of memories of Jack Tunney, and he didn't get physical like some of the other presidents did. I don't think he was ever a wrestler. He was a promoter from Toronto or Ontario in general, and he never got physical he never actually wrestled. He never got physical as far as in a promo or in a segment with another wrestler is concerned. The only time I can remember was like December of '88, a month before I was born actually, but I watched old tapes or whatever, Bad News Brown wanted to challenge Macho Man Randy Savage for the WWF Championship, and he was demanding that Tunney give him the match. And then I think Bad News grabbed his tie, and Tunney was on his knees, and he threatened him. He came close to like knocking his teeth out, and then I guess Tunney gave in, and that led to a series of house show matches between Macho and Bad News, and it gave him that sort of early main event rub, which I don't think he ever got back. So he's stuck in the mid card purgatory after that. Another instance with Tunney. I'm going to talk about Tunney's memorable moments, not just that one physical moment. November of '91, Jake the Snake Roberts, Macho Man Randy Savage on an episode of Superstars when the big King Cobra bit the arm of Macho Man Randy Savage. He was tied up in the ropes. Oh, it was so horrific. Even I remember watching it as an archive. My brother had it on tape, and I watched it when I was like 10 or 11. Oh my God, I was scared shitless from that moment. Tunney made an announcement straight from the corporate offices in Stamford, Connecticut. Henceforth, from this point on, there will be no reptiles or other such animals allowed at ringside during matches. He said mammals, but anyways, that's a declarative statement. So, as a result of that, Jake the Snake Roberts could not bring Lucifer, or whatever the hell his King Cobra was, to the ring, or any snake for that matter, just because of that incident. Fast forward now to January of 1994, after we had two winners in the 1994 Royal Rumble, which I did a whole video rewriting several months ago, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it. Ultimately, it was decided that both men won the Rumble, Bret Hart and Lex Luger. There was a coin toss to instead of booking a triple threat match, which would have been simple but not common for the time period, they decided to have a coin toss in the ceremonial red carpet event in the ring. The winner of the coin toss will be the first man to challenge Yokozuna for the World Wrestling Federation Championship at WrestleMania 10. The man who loses the coin toss will challenge the winner of said match. Lex Luger won the coin toss. He got to challenge Yoko first. So Tunney was involved in that. So it has to be something out of the ordinary. Also, I forgot 1992, end of 91, early 92, after this Tuesday in Texas, there were two controversial world title changes. Survivor Series 91, Undertaker beat Hogan. A week later, this Tuesday in Texas, they only did that pay-per-view once on a Tuesday night, just to test out the pay-per-view market that particular year, or that particular point in time anyways, and Hogan won the belt back from Undertaker. They were both screwy finishes, with Ric Flair being involved with the chair shot, which, would have been commonplace for the Attitude Era onward, but back then it was strictly taboo. You win under the shittiest of circumstances, and you don't really deserve to win, which that's actually not a bad ruling, but then again, I don't know. I guess rules are meant to be broken, but sometimes that goes without saying, but that they could have kept that ruling in kayfabe and could have made some more interesting storylines out of that. Just thought of that just now. It's kind of a light bulb went off in my head. But anyways, getting back to the subject, why this is about Jack Tunney. After those two screwy chair shot finishes involving Ric Flair and the Hogan Undertaker matches, he goes on screen from his corporate Stamford office in Stamford at the WWF headquarters. Due to the circumstances surrounding the last World Wrestling Federation Championship matches, Hulk Hogan has been officially stripped of the World Wrestling Federation Championship. The belt will remain vacant until January 19th at the Royal Rumble, at which point 30 superstars have a chance to compete in that match to become the new World Wrestling Federation champion. He was actually booed at the Knickerbocker Arena in Albany that night when he was going to present the world champion. Of course, Ric Flair won that match, and then, legendary stuff. Yeah, Tunney had a great long run, but I think there was something, his run came to an end kind of abruptly in the spring or summer of 95. He wasn't doing much by 95, rarely seen on television. Last time I can remember seeing him was probably In Your House, the first one in Syracuse. Jerry Lawler was begging him to have that to challenge Bret Hart to that match where Lawler won with help from Hakushi. That was the last I ever saw Tunney, and then it was like June or July of 95 he was out, and that's when I started watching, so we were like two ships sailing the night, myself and Jack Tunney. I think due to financial losses in the midst of the New Generation era, coming off the heels of the steroid trial a year or so prior, Vince McMahon was in the World Wrestling Federation were losing a lot of money. Money was such an issue that they couldn't afford to run They couldn't afford to do business with a certain territory or a certain organization based out of Toronto, which involved the Tunney family, like the Maple Leaf Gardens. And it had something to do with the Maple Leaf Gardens. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but WWF had to stop doing business with them due to finances, and that affected Jack Tunney and I think his pay. So I don't think he was getting paid as much as he was, in years prior. So he just decided to leave, and it seemed, I guess it was sort of amicable. It's like, business isn't great, and I'm not benefiting from it, so I'm out, and that's that. This point, we needed a new on-screen authority figure. Who did we get next? Gorilla Monsoon. Pardon me. Gorilla himself, Robert James Morella. Now he was only president for 2 years, 1995 to 1997. Gorilla is a retired professional wrestler, real name Robert James Morella. He's the father of the late great referee Joey Morella, who actually died before him. Joey died in a car accident years before Gorilla died, both in the 90s. And Gorilla was a tremendous play-by-play announcer alongside color commentator Bobby the Brain Heenan. Heenan Monsoon, classic duo for comedy, just quick wit and banter. But Monsoon took a more serious role when he was appointed president, and he was just like Tunney, if not more direct and upfront with the wrestlers, certainly the heels, putting them in their place. Monsoon, I'm trying to remember what was the most, early on, he had to deal with the likes of a newcomer, the man they call Vader, in January of 96. Vader pushed the limits of Monsoon's authority so much so that after Monsoon suspended him, Vader knocked him out and delivered, I think, 2 Vader bombs to Monsoon, and nobody had ever seen an authority figure get attacked like that. I remember it made the cover of, Raw magazine, the winter, spring of 96. It's Vader time in big letters, and Monsoon with his glasses off, and he's looking all incapacitated, and he sold that attack well. I guess as a kid, I probably thought he was dead from that. He killed him, squashed him like a bug. But remember, I was 6 going on 7, so of course I'd have that mentality, as wild and crazy as it sounds. But we needed an interim president, somebody to handle the day-to-day operations, so to speak, or who could appear on TV every week while Monsoon is selling this injury, because they respected selling back then. Monsoon didn't get right up and walk back. No, they carted him out. You owe respect to this business by selling the attack like that. Come on, that's how we do it. So Rowdy Roddy Piper was then appointed the interim president while Monsoon was injured, from January 96 to March 96, right around WrestleMania 12. Roddy Piper was responsible for setting up the Iron Man match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in the main event of WrestleMania 12 that year. And Gorilla Monsoon, I'm sure, approved it, and of course Monsoon was actually there. I'm not sure if I mentioned this when I did the rewriting of WrestleMania 12. He was there that night, and at ringside he returned just in time to watch the bout, and he was ruling the overtime. He ruled the overtime after there was no decision after an hour, and Bret Hart, of course, wasn't happy with that, but that's neither here nor there. So Monsoon, I remember him being involved when they tried to turn Jim Ross heel in the fall of 96. So at this point, Razor Ramon Diesel left the World Wrestling Federation for WCW. And JR, trying to play up to the heel announcer, I guess he was, trying to be at the time, continuously said on commentary, "I have it on good authority that the bad guy, Razor Ramon, and Big Daddy Cool Diesel are on their way to return to the World Wrestling Federation." Gorilla Monsoon makes a press release announcement on TV via satellite. They did a lot of via satellites. We didn't have a Titantron back then, but I'm sure it was played on the big screens in the municipal auditoriums or civic centers, wherever we were in the mid-90s, due to low ticket sales. For those of you who've been misled by Jim Ross, I'm here to clear up what he said. Here to clear up this fact. Both Scott Hall and Kevin Nash will not be returning to the World Wrestling Federation, as they are currently under contract in another organization. There will be no sighting of Razor Ramon and Diesel, and I apologize to anyone that may have been misled by Jim Ross. Jim, you need to get your facts straight next time. Oh, yes, he put him in his place there. I think they were trying to, Jim Ross had ultimately led to that work shoot, one of the best legendary ones in September of 96 on Raw, where Jim Ross talks about being fired for having Bell's palsy by Vince McMahon. And actually, I think that was the first time I ever heard of Vince being acknowledged as the owner on screen around that time. And that was the night Rick Bogner, the fake Razor, debuted. And then Glenn Jacobs arrived shortly thereafter. So Monsoon was involved in that angle. I have a memory of him being involved right before WrestleMania 13, that Monday Night Raw's War. March 97, Monday Night Raw had now become Raw's War. Gorilla Monsoon hung on for the very early part of the Attitude Era in his final months as president. So March 17th, 1997, 6 days before WrestleMania 13, we have a steel cage match, main event for the World Wrestling Federation Championship. Psycho Sid defending against Bret Hart. If Bret wins, his match with Austin would have been for the belt. Ooh, that probably would have been sick. That was a great match, obviously, but oh man, could you imagine the added excitement? I'm glad they kind of held off because the match didn't need the belt. But anyways, so Gorilla Monsoon says, I know WrestleMania is this Sunday, so here's what's going to happen. The winner of the steel cage match tonight, whether it be Bret Hart or Psycho Sid, they will walk into WrestleMania as champion and defend their belt against their respective challenger, whether it's Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Undertaker. I get it. I know. The timing stinks, but we're going to have this match here tonight on Raw is War. Another incident I can recall with Stone Cold in April 97. Austin injured Bret the night after Revenge of the Taker. You're going to get your ass out of this building right now. And this is Monsoon when he really had to scream. This is how we talk to the brain. Will you stop? Will you be serious? And then one of my last memories of Monsoon was May of 97 at Cold Day in Hell in your house. The handicap match with the Nation of Domination against Ahmed Johnson. It was a 3-on-1 gauntlet, which Farouk ultimately won for the Nation. Other Nation members were at ringside when only one was supposed to be, so Monsoon comes down. They had the ramp and the black ring skirt, red ropes. So this was like getting really into the attitude portion of the New Generation era, if you will, smooth transition. Monsoon comes out. Only one member of the Nation of Domination is allowed at ringside, and that's the man competing in the gauntlet right now, whether it's Savio Vega, Crush, or Farouk. And he sent the other members to the back. Clarence Mason, PG-13, D'Lo Brown, whomever. Then August 97, the role of president had been retired. For now, we had a commissioner. Gorilla Monsoon's health was declining, so they didn't explain that on screen, but, they said he was going to stay on as president but take a less active role, so then we hired a commissioner in the form of Sergeant Slaughter. Only lasted a year under that position of 97 to 98. He put D-Generation X in order, and that's in order. DX messed with him like crazy, and it led to that match, which isn't so great, between Sergeant Slaughter and Triple H at In Your House to Generation X, the boot camp match. Slaughter was like 43, and the game was probably like 27 going on 28. And, the game put him in his place there. This is an authority figure that just couldn't prevent himself from not being overruled by his underlings. So Slaughter, the DX stuff was probably the most memorable. I do remember the week before WrestleMania 14, he was telling Stone Cold that he had to have a match on Raw before his main event at WrestleMania 14. He said, if you don't wrestle Rocky Maivia here tonight on Raw is War, then your match at WrestleMania will be non-titled. Austin agreed to it, not before. He shook his hand, agreed. Stunner! Oh my god, it's such great. I remember loving that even at, 9 years old when that happened. Sergeant Slaughter made sure he faced The Rock. It was a non-title match. Rock was Intercontinental Champ, and Austin was the challenger walking into Mania challenging Shawn Michaels, the WWF champ at the time. And if you don't face Rocky Maivia, he told him. They weren't even calling him The Rock yet. Your match at WrestleMania will be non-title. Damn, that'll kill the excitement. Austin, Tyson, Michaels. Shit. He stuttered him, and that's what Sarge gets for his troubles. Sergeant Slaughter used to live in Weston for a brief period of time. I think it was late 80s, early 90s. I don't have quite all the details on that, but it's true. Sergeant Slaughter lived in Weston, Connecticut. Before long, we had a new commissioner, a guy that used to mess around with Sergeant Slaughter very frequently. Who might that be? The Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Mind you, he was retired from in-ring competition at this point in time. From 1998 to 2000, Commissioner Michaels. First, he was corrupt because he had joined the corporation for all of 5 weeks before disowning them and was going to join DX and then got injured. he was so inconsistent in his appearances. Like I said, he was such an asshole backstage, nobody wanted him around. And just as well, he wasn't going to come. I already told you about that example of how he overruled Mr. McMahon, mostly on the side of the faces, but he was corrupt for a short time when he was with the corporation. He cost X-Pac a world title match against The Rock on Raw one night. Excuse me. And then, what else? Oh, yeah, I remember Commissioner Michaels, he appeared at WrestleMania 15 and, trying to make sure the main event between Austin and Rock wasn't going to end in screwy finish. He appeared on an episode of Raw, May of 99, it was before Owen Hart died, where he made all these matches with various members of the union against the corporate ministry. Well, the corporate ministry would definitely outnumber the union. There was like 14 members and the union only had 4. So he put all these matches together and he was on the Titantron the whole time. I remember he made a joke, I think it was like to Boss Man who was holding a nightstick. Big Boss Man, what's up, buddy? Is that a nightstick or are you just excited to see me? I get that nightstick joke. Gets me every time. But, the first SmackDown. No, not the pilot, April 99, but the season premiere in August of 99. Shawn Michaels is the guest referee for the WWF title match. Triple H defending against The Rock. And he was a fair referee. And at this point in time, Shawn was running Texas Wrestling Alliance, Texas Wrestling Academy in San Antonio, where Bryan Danielson was one of his first graduates, an actual graduate from there. He was trained by the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. So, Shawn is doing everything right, and we're hoping Rock wins the belt from Triple H. Triple H just won it the night before, Raw in Ames, Iowa, from Mankind. This is Triple H's first world title in the WWE. As soon as Rock goes to the people's elbow, he runs across the rope. Shawn, super kicks him. And then Triple H goes for the pedigree, and he pins 1, 2, 3. That's the last we ever saw of Shawn in the 90s on TV. Jim Ross is so livid, he says, "God damn it, we've got a crooked commissioner." I think they were going to do something there, maybe reform a heel DX, but again, Shawn probably fucked up everything backstage. He screwed it all up. He was either screwed up on so many pills, or he was just fighting with people backstage. It got to a point, I think it was like 2000, 2001, he passed out backstage. He was asleep. He had his hat on, and he was lying like this on the couch. His hat's covering his face, and Triple H found him there, and Vince just sent him home. He was in no condition to even be on TV, let alone be at the building. That's how bad his soma addiction was. All those painkillers, those muscle relaxers. It's terrible, folks. You gotta stay away from that stuff. I've never done it myself, I'm happy to say, but that's the dangers of becoming a professional wrestler and the addictions that they'll suffer through and follow. And luckily, Shawn Michaels has come to a better place in his life where he doesn't rely on that stuff anymore. I guess religion helped him out. It doesn't work for everybody, but it certainly helped him find a better path, and he's much happier in life and, living it up, I guess, living the dream. But, yeah, they had to send him home, and that it affected the best friendship between Triple H and Shawn. Triple H said, if you're going to act like this, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And they didn't talk for like a whole year till like the spring of 2002. Anyway,